Hello everyone and welcome back to another great super cool radio interview. I'm your host as always, Matthew Thomas. Thank you so much for tuning in. Before I start talking about my guest, just a quick reminder to thumbs up this video and make sure to subscribe and turn that notification bell. That way you don't miss any new interviews or episodes. I got an incredible guest that I'm very excited to have on the podcast. He is Andrew Hagar. Recently, he released his latest single, entitled Systematic Minds, and appeared alongside his father, Sammy Hagar, on the Paramount Plus docuseries Family Legacy. In this interview, we discuss the writing and recording of the new single, Systematic Minds, appearing on Family Legacy, plus so much more. I hope you enjoy this interview, so let's dive in. Before we jump into the show, I want to tell you about our merch store on Threadless. Shop a wide variety of logos with multiple colors and sizes available for each design. Your support is greatly appreciated and helps us continue to make killer content like this episode. Please visit supercoolradio.threadless.com or the link in the description to shop now. I got an incredible guest joining me at this time. He recently released a brand new single entitled Systematic Minds, plus appeared alongside his father, Sammy Hagar, on the Paramount Plus series Family Legacy. Please welcome Andrew Hagar.
Thank you so much for having me.
Very nice to meet you. Thank you so much for stopping by Super Cool Radio.
Absolutely. Nice to meet you as well.
So I know we got a ton of great stuff. You've been very busy not only this year, but throughout your whole music career, plus some other things I do want to talk about as well. But before we jump into everything, I want to start with a fun question.
Yeah.
What is one album and one movie you recommend everyone check out in their lifetime?
Oh, geez. On the spot. I mean, everybody's tastes are different. Something like that I really loved growing up was horror movies. One of my favorite horror movies is The Thing. I think it does a tremendous job of conveying that old cosmic horror sense of dread. So if you like horror movies or you like kind of sci-fi horror and you haven't seen a movie that's quite piqued your interest, check out The Thing. It's old. It holds up. It's got some hilarious moments and some great, genuine, pure terror moments as well. For records, I'm going to go something on the completely opposite end of the spectrum. I'm a big fan of songwriters and songwriting. One of my favorite, folkier records of all time is by, I think they're Norwegian, the Kings of Convenience, and it's a record called Declaration of Dependence. It's full of really great little emotional hooks and funny puns as well. Great record.
Those are two answers I was definitely not expecting from you.
That's what you can expect with me is the unexpected at all times. So,
well, those are good. I've watched. Well, I haven't seen the thing all the way through, but I've seen parts of it. But They definitely get that vibe of as you said, that dread. They nail it with that movie.
They do, and the remake / prequel is pretty decent too. It kind of links to the original film in an interesting way. But I love the original, Kurt Russell, and it's just Kurt Russell has a lot of really hilarious one-liners that kind of add a little bit of levity to an otherwise pretty gnarly movie. So, yeah.
Oh, definitely. And then I haven't heard of Kings of Convenience, but I'm going to check them out now.
Yeah, they're really good. I don't think most people would realize that they're Norwegian or Northern European without doing a little research into it, because it sounds like great old school Americana, just two guys, great harmonies, some really interesting kind of guitar parts, but the songwriting is very, very good, and they have some really witty, clever lyrics. I think they blew up a while back, maybe 10 years ago or something, for a couple viral singles. Mrs. Cold, 24 plus 25, all these kind of old folkier tunes, but they got some new stuff too, and they've been around forever. The main dude, Erland Doy, I think he has 3 or 4 other projects. Whitest Boy Alive, people might remember that from the early 2000s and stuff. Golden Cage, if you were on, what was it back then? Pandora, quite a bit. You might have heard that song.
Yeah, I'm still surprised it's still around and not as prominent as it was. But like, because someone asked me, like, "Oh, is your show on Pandora?" I'm like, "Oh, you still use Pandora?"
Yeah.
The answer is no. I don't have it on there, but I'm surprised that someone actually still uses it.
Same. Yeah, I didn't even know it was still around, to be honest.
That and like I was surprised like Napster is still around.
That
Yeah,
blows me away, especially considering everything that happened with that really high profile lawsuit and all this stuff. It's kind of wild, man.
it is. But I do want to talk about you guys. I said I got a lot of cool stuff going on for you right now. But before we kind of dive into the new single Systematic Minds, so you are a second generation musician, as I kind of covered in my intro. When did you know you wanted to pursue music like full time?
I mean, I always loved music. I started playing music in various capacities when I was a kid, but I never really got serious about it until, 2012, I started playing around with a couple friends, started like a little 2-man punk project with a rotating cast of bass players. And that was fun, but I didn't really seriously start songwriting until maybe about 2016. And that's the same year that I ended up doing a lot of touring. And subsequently, pretty much every year after that until the pandemic started, I was touring consistently, playing about 100 shows a year, if not more. And a lot of them were just smaller, whatever, open mic nights, whatever I could get just to get more and more experience. I felt like I was coming into the game a little bit later. And even though I had a lot of experience as a writer, I didn't have a lot of experience as a performer. So I just wanted to get more comfortable on stage and make sure that I could make the most of the opportunities I was getting,
No, I completely understand. Do you think there was like a learning curve with like becoming, not transitioning from a writer to becoming a performer and a writer?
There was definitely a learning curve, just like anything else. But I think I had a lot of really unique experience that made it a little bit easier to transition. Growing up, I did a lot of, I was forced through my school to do a lot of plays. And so, I mean, even from when I was like 7 or 8 years old onwards, I was doing 3 or 4 plays a year in front of big audiences. And then when I was competing in like Muay Thai kickboxing and grappling, I was like fighting in front of, hundreds of people. And that's a completely different experience. But a lot of the stuff that you learn from that is transferable one-to-one when you start performing, getting ready to like perform at your highest capacity or as close as you can get on the day in that moment. I think those are some really interesting kind of skill transferences that maybe not a lot of people would be aware of.
Oh yeah, for sure. Plus, like the discipline as well that goes along with like any kind of mixed martial arts. You have to be disciplined,
Yeah,
not only just like mentally, but also with the skills as well.
totally. And I mean, we're getting in there and rehearsing and doing all this stuff in preparation for a show is very similar mentality wise in training for a fight. You just want to get as prepared as you can so you don't have to think about it in the moment. You can just do it because you don't have time to think. I mean, obviously the show is a little bit different. You do have time to sit there and kind of listen to the crowd and, do all that stuff. No one's trying to rip your head off, thank God. But like, generally speaking, but,
for the most part, hopefully that doesn't happen.
Right. Depends where you're at and what you're saying on stage. You know what I mean? So yeah,
that's true. No, yeah, no, for sure. But for you, since kind of going, as you said, kind of starting full time 2016, what was like the best advice your father gave you?
Oh man, just to work really extremely hard and lower your expectations.
I mean, it's not wrong. That's
people say it's like 10 years to an overnight success. So, I'm almost there.
No, I feel you on that. It's kind of funny. Like when I started this like endeavor, as like you always have like your high expectations of like, oh, I want to do this and do this and do that, and then you look at it and go, you know what? Maybe I'll just start with baby steps. Just let's see if I can do this first, and then I can branch out more.
Well, it's the little victories, stack a lot of little victories, and it's a big one. So.
No, yeah, for sure. So, for you now, before we talk about the new single Systematic Minds, obviously, Andrew Hagar, your last name is Hagar. Do you feel like any pressure because of your last name?
I did for a while. I didn't actually start releasing music under my own name until maybe just a couple of years ago. I had a lot of different projects, different titled projects that I released music under, EPs under, before I was comfortable enough to release stuff under my own name. Just because, yeah, it's like, it's not my expectation, but there are a lot of other people out there who want something when they hear the name. There's a lot of people that instantly are like revolted by me before they even hear anything or know anything about me because of the name. So, expectation plays a huge factor in that. And I just wanted to make sure that I had matured as an artist and as a songwriter before I started putting stuff out under my own name. But at this point in time, like, at my age and the amount of life that I've lived, I really could care less what someone's, what someone's expectation is of me. If they like the music, that's fantastic. If they don't, that's fantastic. But if you come on, my social media or my DMs and start talking a bunch of shit, that's a different story. Which, unfortunately, that does happen a lot. So,
I'm sorry to hear about that part, unfortunately, but
come on.
I mean, there's expectations for like almost for everyone, like for anyone meets, they have expectations of how someone's going to act or be, and especially with who your father is, people already have like expectations just based off of like him and not yourself.
Totally. But I mean, like that comes with the territory. It's a blessing, ultimately, because I do get some more eyeballs than someone, at my level of experience in the music industry would get. And I've gotten some opportunities just based off his name that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. So I'm really thankful for it, and like with anything else in life, you get the positives and the negatives. So you just got to deal with it,
you just got to roll with it. I do think there are bound like, people, talking shit to you like on social media. Obviously, I don't think it really bothers you too much, because obviously there's that boundaries, but it still could, get to some people and yourself as well. But I unfortunately, it's a fortunate part of like any creator that there's people like that.
Oh yeah, and it's funny to me. I'm just like, man, like you could sit there and get worked up about some stranger on the internet, trying to get crazy with you or whatever. But I just feel sorry in a way for some of these people, because it's like you just don't have anything else going on in your life. You spend so much time and emotional energy picking fights with strangers on the internet. It's like, what does that say about you and your life and how you allocate your time? You know what I mean? Like, get a hobby, man. Like, touch some grass. It's all good. So.
Right, exactly. That's kind of how I feel. Like luckily, I've been lucky. I haven't had many people like that. To try to do that to me. But I always think it's like you could put your time to something else, or you could write a song or create a podcast. Like you can create as well.
Wouldn't that be something? You know what I mean? Then you can have other people come on and talk shit to you, bud. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Well, I see that sometimes. Like, I usually don't respond to haters unless they come at like, if they come with an actual valid constructive criticism, I appreciate that. And I'm like, okay, well, you took the time to put together a well thought out, well articulated argument. And sure, I'll respond to that. But, 90% of the time, it's not that. And to those kinds of people, I would just be like, oh, cool, you're criticizing me for my song. Let's hear your song. What does your song sound like? But they don't have any songs. So there you go.
Exactly. No, I'm the same way with that. If it's something constructive, if someone's like, hey, maybe you should try this, or maybe you're doing this, it looks a little weird, maybe you should try this, or whatever. Yeah. I have no problem with that. Now, if someone just says like you suck, or just sends a poop emoji, there's nothing, there's no conversation that they're gonna have.
Like, what are we doing here, guy? Yeah.
Exactly. All right, so I want to dive in to the brand new single, Systematic Minds, just released recently. So for you, like, how was it writing and recording this single? Because it's a little bit different, at least from what I've listened to compared to some of your previous work. It's got a little bit of a different vibe to it.
Yeah, definitely. This is the very first song that my friend Trev Lukather and I co-wrote together. We did it back in December of 2020, so we've been sitting on it for a little while. And all of the stuff that I've released so far, was co-written and produced by Trev Lukather. And so they all occupied kind of the same space when it comes to the body of work. But this being the first thing we worked on, I think it's closer in tone to what I was doing immediately before, which is I released an EP, I think back in early 2019 or late 2018. That was under the project title SOS, and it was more of like psychedelic folk rock. And so this is kind of closer to that. And I had built out kind of a second EP for that and started to turn it into a little more of like an indie rock kind of thing. And had, a large number of songs that I was working with. I was talking to some labels. I had some release stuff scheduled for 2020. And then, that got the big kibosh, so.
I know, I feel you.
Yeah, it was tough. But, I'm glad that Trev and I ended up working together on this stuff because it allowed me to kind of flex my creative muscle in a different way. Because previous to that, I had pretty much only just written by myself or with another kind of like more folk style, like songwriting partner or something. So this was really cool because Trev is such a great producer and such a fantastic guitar player. Him, creating a lot of the music, creating like a little demo, like instrumental bed for me to kind of, write over and work with. It allowed me to do things that I couldn't do on my own, just writing with an acoustic guitar in my bedroom, So in that sense, it was really, really fun as a creative exercise for me because I'm always trying to expand my creative horizons and, write with different people. Like I did a lot of work writing for other artists for Sync and stuff as well, like as a ghostwriter, writing lyrics and whatnot. And that's really fun. This was a different thing though, because I was writing for myself. So I really enjoy writing with other people as long as, everybody's gelling together, which of course, Trev and I have known each other for like, over 10 years. He's one of my best friends. So it was a really, really fun process.
Well, I'm really glad to hear the process was very enjoyable for you. Do you think it was like different compared like that writing process, writing with Trev? Do you think that was different compared to like some of the other songs you've written?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I primarily write most of the stuff, by myself, like whatever on the couch in the bedroom, like whatever, just me and an acoustic guitar. And when it comes time to, produce the songs, I got to kind of figure out, okay, how do I want this to sound? What's the vibe? And I self-produced most of the stuff before, had some of my friends come in and play on it. And, we were able to produce some pretty high quality stuff, but working with Trev, he's got such a different mind for production, coming from the background that he does and having the musical pedigree of, Steve Lukather and Toto and all of his Trev's got a really great ear for like anthemic kind of pop influenced rock songs. So that's reflected on a lot of these songs, even though I was kind of pushing it in a grittier direction. Like I always wanted it to be raw, like more raw and closer to, whatever, like 90s alternative or grunge or something, really like the majority of the music I listen to is like, garage or like heavy psych. I grew up listening to like a lot of punk and hardcore and, I love industrial metal. It's like, so finding a happy medium between all those things, when I'm writing with someone like Trev is really fun. It's a great exercise, because it's difficult for me to do a lot of that stuff just on my own, especially if I'm the guy that's in there, playing everything. Like on a lot of my previous EPs, I played most of the stuff myself. I had my buddy come in and lay down drums and another buddy come in and put some lead guitar down. But, for the most part, I'm just building out the tracks. And it's really, really difficult for someone that's not like a, incredible classically trained musician, because I got started a little later than most people. So, yeah.
No, for sure. Especially having someone else to kind of like bounce ideas off just to build the song better. Like you can only come up with as many ideas as you can come up with. So it's kind of easier when you have someone else to kind of, flush those ideas out even more.
Totally. And Trev's a great soundboard for all this stuff. Like we were going back and forth on a lot of different ideas. And yeah, I'm looking forward to releasing the first of 2 EPs, I think, in June. And I haven't announced the date yet, but, people are going to get to see a little bit bigger body of work with this stuff and kind of get a vibe for the sound. And I think people are really going to enjoy this stuff based on the reaction to everything that I put out so far.
I've definitely been enjoying it, especially like Systematic Minds is actually one of my favorite songs by you because it has like that grunge feel to it, but also there's like, I can pick up like kind of like Americana, like a modernized Americana feel to it as well. And and just some good old rock and roll thrown in there as well.
Yep. Some big old Def Leppard sounding drums and stuff. And, But yeah, I'm glad that you picked up on like the kind of more Americana influence, because as a songwriter, that's pretty much, what I do by default. It's a much more down home, folky, rootsy kind of thing, just trying to express my innermost emotions. I'm not writing for, like when I was writing for Sync, it's like you got a literal, couple lanes you got to stay in based on the Sync brief, like, oh, we're writing for XYZ show. They don't give you the name, but they give you a general ballpark and the vibe they want and what they want it to convey and kind of the scene they're thinking of and all this stuff. Very specific. And so you're writing like in a box, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's hard to write personally when you're writing in a box and have it be relatable to everyone else. That's a skill like you really have to work hard to develop. And I was definitely in the midst of that development, when everything kind of came crashing down around us. So
yeah, for sure. No, definitely. When you have those kind of more constraints, it's harder to to make your own personal touch to it when you have to fit in, as you said, kind of stay in those few lanes that you have.
Yeah.
But now, like doing your own kind of stuff, you have way more freedom to go really any direction that's really that you're really feeling.
Yeah, totally.
So you did talk about so you work on some EPs as well. They're gonna be releasing, as you said, in June. Can you give any kind of hints, like musically, lyrically, like what people can expect from your new music?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if people listen to Red Light Appetite, Systematic Minds, Leave It Alone, if you wanna, like, it's in that general ballpark. Like the EP will have a couple songs that people have already heard. It's gonna have, kind of as the anchor, a big bombastic kind of rock and roll song, like similar to Red Light Appetite. And then there's going to be more of a mid-tempo, not a ballad, but something that's a little more personal that people can sink their teeth into, like Systematic Minds. So that's really cool. And then the second EP is going to have some very different stuff on it, like a couple songs that are more, closer in tone to what I've already done, but a couple things that are just really outside the box experimentation, which are really, really fun. So yeah, I can't wait. I mean, Trev and I did a whole record together, and just the way that the marketplace is right now, rather than releasing a full record without, the requisite capital expenditure, all this, it's tough releasing music in the music industry. If you don't have a label or like an independent investor to really kind of juice things up, it's hard to get the eyeballs and kind of break through all the rest of the noise. I mean, there's what they say, like, I think it's 10,000 or even maybe 100,000 songs released every day on Spotify. You know what I mean? So for somebody that doesn't have $100,000 to drop on digital ad spend and stuff, it's difficult. But doing an EP, there's like less risk, and you're giving people who actually do listen to your music a little bit more substantial piece to kind of get invested in. So I think we're going to do 2 EPs instead of a full-length record. That might make more sense.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially with the marketplace and the way it is. Like, EP singles are, what kind of people, what's kind of been people been leaning towards. Obviously, like Spotify, like I think the CEO said that like people should just be putting out singles or something like that. I forget exactly what he said with that, but I mean, I'm an album guy. I love albums. Yeah. And that's, I have a whole CD collection that people call me archaic for having. I'm like, oh, well, I can still enjoy them.
Yeah, same. I mean, I got a big collection of vinyl, and I'm like very old school. I love to sit down and listen to a full record and get immersed. I love it when people do concept records, and they get really invested in this idea. Like, I think that's really interesting, and I would love it if more mainstream artists would try to do stuff like that these days and kind of open up a lot of newer music fans' eyes to kind of what's possible with music as a creative expression,
No, I totally agree. I know we can cover a lot with that, and there's a lot of avenues with that. The only thing I will say is that, or like someone will release a bunch of singles and then they'll like put it all together for an album. I'd be like, well, I just heard all of them. Like, what? It's kind of different for me if I like hear a bunch of singles and they're just on an album, like all of them. It kind of ruins the experience a little bit for me because I want to enjoy the album from like start to finish, not, oh, I heard this song before, I heard this song before kind of thing. But I understand, again, as we talk about with the way the market is, why people do that.
It's tricky, But plus, like, if you're making things pretty much solely for a streaming platform, I mean, that's the only way to do it. You're releasing good songs as singles to kind of anchor the EP or the album in some cases. And yeah, it's like, well, you've already heard 5 or 6 of the 10 to 12 tracks, so what, are you just going to skip those guys, when they come on, if you're listening to the record? But I don't know. I mean, I would be interested to see how many people are actually consuming like a full length record in one sitting, as opposed to just listening to the songs they like. Because if you look at the numbers, like generally on a record, you'll see every song you're losing people. And then by the end of the record, if you don't have one of the big singles that's already released at the end of the record, it's just straight downward slope. You're not capturing people's attention, which is a bummer, because a lot of times people put some of the best songs like that I like in terms of deep cuts are somewhere weird, like on a 10-song record around song 7 or 8. And you're like, okay, well, if you just fell off, you're missing some of the best stuff,
Oh, exactly. I know. And again, there's a lot going on. Obviously, society's been changing with that, but as we kind of talked about with everything. But yeah, it does. You can see it. But I'm curious, because I know vinyl has been outselling CDs lately. And I'd be curious, like, are people just? I would assume. I hope that if people buy the vinyl, that they're listening to it. They're not just buying it to buy it. I would hope that they're consuming it. So I would be curious, like, going from like listening on Spotify to people listening on vinyl and have Spotify, like, what are they listening to the most?
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what like a big vinyl person is listening to on Spotify and what their listening habits are, for sure. I would love to see that information. I used to do like data analytics and marketing for a while, right out of college. So I love all this stuff. Like on the back end, like I pay very close attention to all of my analytical data, and I wish that it was easier to get some of the more important stuff, because that would help me a lot. But Facebook and Meta, Instagram, they don't make it very easy to get the meaningful data.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
It's really obtuse. It's hidden behind so many different little pages, and you have to go looking for, in a million different places for stuff that should be all together, if you ask me. But that's a UI problem. That's not something I'd fucking pay attention to. So I don't know.
I know. I feel.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
No, I feel you on that. I do got a few times I do want to cover. I will tell you a funny story real quick about Facebook. I got a they give like notifications, like, for my business page, like if you spend this amount of money, you can reach this amount of people.
Yeah.
The one notification I got a few weeks ago, it said spend $10 to reach 6 more people. And I was like, man, that's a deal of a century.
Great conversion there, guys. Like, what the fuck? I hate that. One of my biggest issues with, the whole boosting thing on Instagram and Facebook or any meta platform really is like, since they started monetizing that stuff, you don't even get your natural engagement on posts anymore. You might, like, say I have 22,000 real followers on Instagram. If I post something about my music, less than 5% of my followers actually see what I'm posting. And if there's like a conversion in there, if I'm trying to get people to link off platform to go to someplace like Spotify, you're fucked. Nobody's seeing it. And then they make you pay to get your normal natural engagement. And it just, I mean, I understand what they're doing. They gotta make money on ad revenue and whatnot, but that shit just kills me. I'm like, what can you do as an independent artist to really get in front of the people who want to see you? They want to hear you. They've followed you, they've done all this stuff, they share your posts and everything, but like 90% of your fans aren't even seeing shit these days. It's very frustrating.
Oh, it definitely is. And as another independent creator as well, I'm not with anybody, and I have to do everything myself, with the social media and all that stuff. It is very frustrating, because like you see how many people follow your page and you see how many people see a post. And I get people mess me like, hey, are you still doing stuff? Do you still have a podcast? And I'm like, oh. So I've been trying to tell people just subscribe to me on like YouTube or Spotify or something. Just like, then you get notified. Like, they're actually good. Like, those platforms are very good with, if I drop a new episode or if you drop a new song, they let people know if you follow, the Spotify or YouTube page.
That's true. But yeah, there's got to be a better way on. I mean, I guess, people tell me, oh, there's a like 1-to-1 conversion on TikTok and all this stuff, but like, I don't know, maybe I'm just brain dead when it comes to this stuff, but I have not been able to get TikTok working for me. I don't know.
I know. I feel you on that, but Before we fall down a rabbit hole of all that.
Yeah, true. Let's keep it on track.
Yeah, I did want to talk about. So as I said, you were part of the Paramount Plus docuseries Family Legacy. How was that experience?
It was fun, man. A good friend of mine, Stormer from Access TV, formerly, he put Glass Entertainment, the production team that did the show, in touch with me. And I've been offered a lot of, reality adjacent stuff over the years. And I really don't enjoy those kinds of things. So I was very reluctant to sign on to this. But the pitch was good. And they were, saying they wanted to essentially put the spotlight on a lot of issues that I like to talk about, mental health stuff, the idea of overcoming the shadow when it comes to legacy and all these things. So, I jumped at the opportunity to get involved, and they licensed some of my music and a music video for the show, Red Light Appetite, which was fantastic. And we did like 7 hours of interviews. One of those hours was spent with my dad, and, talked about a lot of really interesting stuff. And then a small portion of the interview was watching some archival footage from MTV. And so I'm like, oh, this is funny. They had me like roast my dad's 90s outfits and stuff. That was entertaining. But yeah, and then the show came out, and originally I think it was supposed to be a longer series, and then in the 11th hour they squashed it down to like 5 episodes and combined everybody into 2 people per episode and all this stuff. And I mean, like, I watched my episode and it was funny. They did a good job of like bringing some levity to it after Draven's story, which is heartbreaking, and he's such a sweet kid, but yeah, I wasn't super stoked that they didn't really talk about much of the more important things we spoke about in the interview. Most of it was just the MTV stuff. So, it was a fun experience to be a part of, but I kind of wish they would have got into more of the nitty gritty aspects of what it was like growing up in this crazy life, but oh well, there's always another show.
No, it's a good outlook on it. And obviously, you don't have any control of like how people produce or put together a show. Unfortunately, especially if there was episode cuts. It happens, as you're very much aware of.
For sure. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm grateful that I was given the opportunity to do that. And like I said, got a little bump on social media, got a little bump in streams. Like it's nice to just have a little extra traction. So. And hopefully people watch it and become interested. I mean, Paramount Plus has got something like 84 million subs. So, if even 1% of those people see my stuff, that's great.
No, exactly. You got a great mindset of it. But yeah, no, it sounds like you had a great experience with it. I would be curious, like you said, you did 7 hours of interviews for it. I'm curious, like, they probably didn't use all of that. So I'm curious, like, where is that? Who has it?
Viacom probably has that footage, and if I ever say anything negative, there's going to be little videos popping up or something. Who knows? No. But yeah, I mean,
we won't go that far.
Yeah, I'm just messing around. But I would like to see perhaps later on if they do like, I don't know, a second season, or they do like a director's cut thing or something, or outtakes. I would love to see some of the other footage, because there is some really interesting stuff that we talked about in the interviews. And it was just disappointing that they didn't include some of the headier stuff. But then again, not everybody's interested in that. Some people just want a nice little fun, quick, puff piece. Let's watch some VMA stuff, and that's that. That's fine. I get that.
Yeah, no, for sure. But but at the end of the day, you did get, as you said, a bump with the exposure and stuff. So I'm glad you had a good experience with that, and also hopefully you widen your audience as well.
Exactly.
So there's one more thing I did want to cover, and then we wrapping this up. I heard that you were a guest DJ on SiriusXM's Ozzy's Boneyard. How was that experience, and like how'd you get selected for that? Like how'd that come out? How'd that come about? I should say.
My friend Tommy London, who's another DJ and musician on Sirius, he just hit me up one day and asked if I wanted to be a guest DJ. I guess he saw what was going on with the MTV thing, and had heard through the grapevine that I'm like a huge old school metalhead, and it was fun, man. I mean, they had me I do a lot of voice acting work on the side, commercial voice acting stuff. So I have my setup here. I just recorded, some intros and little tidbits and stories about the songs that I selected, and sent it into them. And same thing, they started spinning Red Light Appetite on Sirius, and really just really happy to be a part of that. It's really cool. I love Ozzy. I loved Black Sabbath growing up, and like it's just a huge honor to be involved in something like that. As fun or silly as it was.
Oh no, for sure, especially obviously Sirius XM, huge, huge amount, of listeners and people who check out the channels and everything. So glad you had another great experience with that. Now, so did you get to pick like some of the songs, or like how'd that go?
Yeah, they asked me to pick 5, like classic metal songs or classic hard rock songs, and I tried to pick, a song from the different generations of metal, starting all the way back with like Black Sabbath, like The Wizard, and some newer stuff that I grew up listening to. Not like newer, but newer in terms of the scope of classic metal, like Tornado of Souls by Megadeth. I used to watch a lot of skate videos growing up and stuff, and I picked Grim Reaper, See You in Hell, because of a hilarious CKY video I watched. Big Judas Priest fan, had to put them on there as well. And then anchoring it all was Red Light Appetite, which is, I guess, one of the more like metal or hard rock adjacent songs off the record. Leave It Alone is pretty heavy too, but I thought Red Light Appetite's probably a little more palatable to people. So
that's a extremely solid list that you put together. If you think of like classic metal bands, like you hit a lot of those.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I also had to put something off of Killers on there. Iron Maiden's one of my favorite like old school metal bands, and I love Killers. I love the first lead singer's tone. It's like so much more raw and gritty. I love Bruce Dickinson, incredible vocalist, incredible performer, and the fact that the man's a commercial airline pilot's pretty cool too. But for my money, Killers is one of the best records they've put out. Maybe call me an old head, but that's just how I feel.
No, I got you. Obviously Bruce Dickinson had like the range, from the high to low range. But yeah, no, the first one, they definitely had more grit in his voice for sure.
Yeah.
But I definitely I saw that in the press release. And I was like, I gotta talk about it, because I don't, unfortunately, I don't have access to Sirius XM most days.
Oh no.
Unless I borrow my mom's car, which sometimes I have to do things because she hasn't, and my car's an 03. Obviously, it doesn't have it. But but if I ever had to borrow a car, I always put on like it's either that like Ozzy's Boneyard or like Liquid Metal or Turbo is usually my go-tos for Sirius XM.
That's awesome. I mean, you can also listen to it anytime on the Sirius XM app just by looking up the Ultimate Sinner playlist, and you'll see probably my big smiling mug or a picture of me looking totally crazy on stage where you can't even see my face because of my hair. So
I didn't know that. I'm going to keep that in mind now.
It's all like bundled up here, but there's a lot in there. I just have to keep it back because, man, it's just too much. Can't see shit.
Was that you?
No, that's my dad.
Oh, okay. Do you have the same curly hair though?
Yes. Arguably, mine is even crazier. So, because I got a little more Sicilian in me than he does, I think.
That's good. No. All right. Well, I think we hit all the high points here.
Absolutely. And probably some low points too. It's all good.
So I just got one more thing before we wrap up this interview. So obviously we kind of talked about what your upcoming plans are for this year, but what else do you have in the works for 2023? And have you thought about like what 2024 is going to hold for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I said, we got the first EP coming out in June, and then the second EP will come out at an unannounced later date. I have some shows, a smattering of shows in the summer. I got a little bit more substantial stuff going on in the fall. And then next year, we have a lot more touring planned and, maybe a full-length record. We'll see.
I like what I'm hearing. Well, hey, I love to see you live sometime, so I do hope that touring does happen.
Please, where are you at? Where you guys go?
Based out of South Bend, Indiana. That's where I live.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, we'll be back in Indiana. We've done some touring out there in Indiana and Idaho before too. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, hey, if you're in the area, man, I definitely want to see you live.
Awesome. Hell yeah.
But Andrew, thanks so much for hanging out with me here on Super Cool Radio. Awesome time chatting with you. I'll leave some links for everything you got going on in the description of this podcast as well. But thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Absolutely. Had a great time. Thanks a lot, Matthew. I really appreciate you, man.
Of course, for Andrew Hagar, I'm your host as always, Matthew Thomas. Thank you so much for watching and listening to Super Cool Radio. And remember, stay frosty.